The fluorescent lights of the airport terminal buzzed overhead as Marcus Johnson tugged his hoodie sleeves over his wrists, the fabric still damp from the sudden downpour he'd sprinted through to make his flight. His leather duffel slung over one shoulder, and his boarding pass crumpled in his other hand. First class, seat 2A. A small luxury he allowed himself after a grueling week of investor meetings. $200 million for Next Gen Ventures, Fidich investment firm built from Escala Dormamento 14. Billion empire, though none of that mattered to the TSA agent who'd pulled him aside for a random additional screening, nor to the elderly white woman who'd clutched her purse when he took the empty seat beside her at the gate, her nervous smile failing to mask her discomfort, the same discomfort he'd seen flicker across the flight attendant's face when he handed her his ticket, her eyes darting from his locks to his Jordans before she forced a chirpy, "Welcome aboard, Mr. Johnson," as if surprised his name matched the reservation, and he'd just settled into his seat, sliding his laptop from his bag to review a pitch deck, when a shadow fell over him, a different flight attendant, her lips pursed. "Sir, we've had a report of suspicious activity," her voice low, but carrying enough for the surrounding passengers to tense, their heads swiveling toward him, and Marcus, baffled, closed his laptop. "What activity?" But she only repeated, "Please come with me." And then the gate agent was there, flanked by two broad-shouldered security officers, their hands hovering near their belts as if he might lunge, and Marcus's stomach dropped, his pulse suddenly loud in his ears, because he knew this dance, had known it since he was 12, and a store manager trailed him through aisles, since college, when campus police demanded his ID outside his own apartment. But this time, on a plane he'd paid $3,000 to board, in a section reserved for those who belonged, he refused to play along. "I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what's happening." And that's when the taller officer gripped his elbow. "Sir, do not resist." And the other passengers gasped as Marcus was yanked upright, his bag toppling, his laptop skidding under the seat in front of him. "I didn't do anything," he barked, but they were already marching him up the aisle, past rows of wide-eyed travelers, one woman filming on her phone, another whispering to her husband. They must have a reason. And then he was on. The jet bridge, the cabin door hissing shut behind him, the officer's grip relentless as he spat. "You're making a mistake." But the man only radioed, "We've got him." As if Marcus were a threat, a criminal, and not a man who'd just been featured on Forbes' cover last month, whose signature was on checks that funded entire departments at this airline, whose face burned now with a humiliation so acute it threatened to choke him, his phone buzzing incessantly in his pocket. Lydia, his COO, who'd watched the whole thing unfold via a passenger's live stream, her texts rapid fire. "Do not speak to them without counsel. We're suing. The internet's already exploding." But Marcus barely registered the words, his mind racing ahead to the fallout, the headlines, the board's reaction, and beneath it all, a fury so deep it crystallized into something lethal. "They'll regret this." Key details covered: Marcus's background, self-made billionaire, founder of Next Gen Ventures, the profiling incident, flight attendants and security targeting him based on bias, public humiliation, passengers filming, whispers justifying his removal, immediate aftermath, Lydia's warnings, the viral spread, Marcus's resolve for revenge, the reckoning. The airport's sterile, flickering lights cast long shadows as Marcus stood motionless on the jet bridge, his breath coming in sharp, controlled bursts, the echo of the cabin door sealing shut behind him like the final note of a symphony he hadn't chosen to hear, his hands clenched at his sides, nails biting into his palms, grounding him against the tidal wave of humiliation and rage that threatened to pull him under, the security officer's grip still tight on his elbow, as if he might bolt, as if he were some unpredictable animal instead of a man who had spent the last decade building an empire from nothing, a man who had just been publicly stripped of his dignity in front of a plane full of people who would go home and tell the story at dinner tables, laughing or shaking their heads, reinforcing the same tired narrative that had followed him his entire life. "You don't belong here," and yet, even as the officer muttered into his radio, "Subject is secure." Marcus's mind was already detaching, slipping into the cold, calculating space, where deals were brokered and wars were waged, his phone vibrating again in his pocket, Lydia's name flashing alongside a string of missed calls from his legal team, the media, even a few board members who had already seen the footage and were scrambling to contain the fallout. But Marcus didn't reach for it. Not yet. Because first he needed to understand why. Why him? Why now? Why this flight? And so he turned his head. Slowly, deliberately, meeting the security officer's gaze with a look that made the man's grip loosen just slightly. What exactly am I being accused of? His voice low, measured, the kind of tone that could slice through steel, and the officer hesitated, glancing at his partner before replying. We received a report of erratic behavior. The vagueness of the answer like gasoline on the fire in Marcus's chest. Erratic behavior, he repeated, flat, disbelieving. I was sitting in my seat, working. What part of that is erratic? But the officer just shrugged. We're following protocol. As if that excused everything. As if protocol hadn't been weaponized against people like him for centuries, and Marcus felt something inside him snap. The last thread of patience dissolving as he yanked his arm free. Your protocol is bullshit. He spat. And this time, the officer didn't stop him as he pulled out his phone. The screen flooded with notifications. Twitter exploding with the hashtag. Plain profiling. News outlets picking up the story. His face already plastered across CNN with the cheering. Tech billionaire forcibly removed from flight. And then Lydia's voice, sharp through the speaker. Marcus, don't say a word to them. We're filing suit within the hour. The internet is losing its mind, but Marcus wasn't listening, not really, because his eyes had caught on an email alert at the top of his screen. A quarterly report from his investment team. Cold numbers on a screen. And suddenly, the path forward was blindingly clear. NextGen Ventures didn't just invest in startups. It held major stakes in Fortune 500 companies, including a $4.2 billion position in the airline that had just dragged him off their plane. And Marcus knew exactly how to make them pay. Key elements. Marcus's psychological shift. The moment his humiliation hardens into resolve, his mind switching from victim to strategist. The power of public outrage, social media reactions, news coverage, and the immediate viral spread of the incident. The financial leverage reveal. The bombshell realization that Marcus holds $4.2 billion in shares, his weapon. Lydia's role. His COO is already steps ahead. Legal teams mobilizing, but Marcus is thinking bigger than a lawsuit. The moment Jake Reynolds stepped out of Diane Harris's office, the atmosphere in the Tesla factory shifted palpably. A charged silence hung in the air, punctuated only by the distant whir of machinery and the occasional hushed whisper as employees pretended to focus on their work while stealing glances at him. Every step Jake took toward Elon Musk's office felt like walking through a surreal dream, his pulse pounding so loudly in his ears that it nearly drowned out the rhythmic clanking of robotic arms assembling car frames in the distance. The Slack channel, which had been a frenzy of memes and nervous jokes just minutes earlier, had gone eerily quiet, as if the entire company was collectively holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Even the usually bustling cafeteria was subdued, with clusters of engineers and production line workers murmuring over coffee, their conversations laced with speculation. Do you think he'll get fired on the spot? What if Elon laughs it off? What if this ends up on Twitter by noon? Each theory more dramatic than the last. As Jake neared the glass-walled office, he could see Elon inside, now fully awake, leaning back in his chair with his phone in one hand and a half-finished cup of cold coffee in the other. The photo was clearly visible on Elon's screen, and for a heart-stopping second, Jake considered turning around and bolting. But before he could retreat, Elon looked up, his sharp blue-gray eyes locking onto Jake's through the glass. There was no anger in his expression, no visible irritation, just an unreadable calm that somehow made the situation even more terrifying. The door was slightly ajar, and Elon motioned for him to enter with a casual flick of his wrist, as if this were just another routine meeting. The office was exactly as Jake had imagined, cluttered with prototypes of Tesla's latest hardware, whiteboards covered in equations and schematics, and a disorganized pile of Mars colonization notes stacked haphazardly in one corner. Elon didn't speak at first, instead swiveling his chair slightly to face Jake fully before setting his phone down on the desk, the infamous photo still glowing on the screen. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, until Elon finally broke it with a single, unexpected question. How long was I out? Jake blinked, momentarily thrown. Maybe 20 minutes, he managed, his voice coming out hoarse. Elon nodded, rubbing his temples. Huh, felt longer. Then, to Jake's utter disbelief, the corner of his mouth twitched almost like he was fighting a smile. You know, I've been telling people for years that sleep is optional. Guess this proves otherwise. Jake didn't know whether to laugh, apologize, or brace for the inevitable but. Elon leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. Here's the thing, Jake. That photo. It's already everywhere. Internal servers, private chats, hell. I've gotten 3 texts from SpaceX guys asking if I'm okay. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. And now I've got PR breathing down my neck, worried this'll leak to Bloomberg by lunchtime. Jake's stomach dropped. Sir, I didn't mean for it to blow up like this. It was just a dumb joke for the team, I know. Elon interrupted, waving him off. But here's the problem. If I fire you, it looks like I can't take a joke. If I ignore it, it looks like I'm weak. And if I laugh about it, the board starts questioning whether I'm taking Tesla seriously enough. He paused, studying Jake. So here's what we're going to do. Jake braced himself. You're going to help me turn this into a win. Before Jake could process that, Elon grabbed his laptop, spun it around, and pulled up a mock-up of a Tesla-branded energy pod, a sleek, futuristic nap capsule with the tagline, "Recharge like the boss." We've been sitting on this design for months, Elon said, grinning now. And thanks to you, we've got the perfect viral moment to launch it. Jake could only stare, his mind racing. Was Elon Musk pivoting on a humiliation, turning a joke at his expense into a marketing opportunity? Then Elon's expression shifted, just slightly. Oh, and Jake, next time you catch me sleeping, maybe just nudge me instead of snapping a pic. The tension shattered. Jake exhaled, a disbelieving laugh escaping him. Noted, sir. As he left the office, the factory's usual noise rushed back in, but now it was laced with something new. Curiosity, relief, and beneath it all, the unspoken realization that maybe, just maybe, the man at the top wasn't as untouchable as they'd all thought. The moment Jake stepped out of Elon's office, the factory floor, which had been buzzing with nervous energy, erupted into a cacophony of whispers, stifled laughter, and outright cheers. The tension that had gripped the building for the past hour dissolved like smoke as word spread that Jake hadn't been fired, that Elon had laughed it off, and that, impossibly, the whole thing was being spun into some kind of corporate rebrand. Employees who had been nervously refreshing Slack now crowded around Jake, clapping him on the back, demanding details. What did he say? Is he pissed? Did he really just turn this into a nap pod ad? Their voices overlapping in disbelief. Across the room, Diane Harris stood with her arms crossed, watching the scene with a mix of exasperation and relief. She had spent the last 40 minutes fielding panic calls from PR, legal, and even a board member who had somehow already heard about the incident. Now, as she watched Elon stride out of his office, his usual restless energy restored, she realized the crisis had been averted or, more accurately, hijacked and repurposed into something else entirely. Elon didn't address the crowd. He didn't need to. Instead, he walked straight to the nearest whiteboard, grabbed a marker, and began sketching what looked like a modified version of the energy pod he'd shown Jake, scribbling notes about materials, dimensions, and inexplicably a built-in espresso machine. The employees closest to him exchanged glances. This was classic Elon. A crisis became a tangent became a project, and suddenly, the entire company's priorities realigned around whatever had captured his attention. Within minutes, a team of engineers had been summoned to discuss feasibility, while the marketing department scrambled to draft a press release about Tesla's new commitment to employee wellness. Meanwhile, outside the factory walls, the internet was already doing what it did best. Though the photo hadn't officially leaked, blurry screenshots had begun circulating on Reddit and Twitter, accompanied by wild speculation. Is this real? Did Musk finally collapse from overwork? Fake, probably a deep fake. Memes sprouted like weeds. Elon photoshopped into history's most famous napping scenes, the Titanic door, the Lion King's Pride Rock. Elon as a sleeping cyborg mid-recharge. Elon curled up in a Doge meme with the caption, "Much sleep. Very tired." The hashtag #NapElon began trending in San Francisco, then nationwide. By midday, even mainstream outlets like CNBC and The Verge had picked up the rumor mill, running speculative pieces with titles like, "Is Elon Musk's work ethic sustainable?" And Tesla employees report brutal hours. Is the CEO feeling the strain? Back at the factory, Jake's phone was blowing up with notifications, texts from friends, LinkedIn connection requests, even a DM from a Wall Street Journal reporter asking for comment. He ignored them all, still processing the whiplash of the last few hours. 1 minute, he'd been sure he was about to be escorted out of the building by security. The next, he was being hailed as the guy who'd punked Elon Musk and lived. It was surreal, but beneath the relief, a nagging thought lingered. What happens when the hype dies down? Elon might have turned this into a win today, but the man was famously mercurial. Would he still be laughing about it tomorrow? As if on cue, Elon's voice cut through the noise. "Jake, get over here." He was standing near the prototype bay, surrounded by engineers, holding up a 3D printed model of the pod. "We need a name for this thing, and since you're the reason we're building it, you get first dibs." The room fell silent, all eyes on Jake. He hesitated, then grinned. How about the Musk ZZZ? Elon's bark of laughter was answer enough. The internet had officially lost its collective mind over NapElon. What began as an internal joke at Tesla's Fremont factory had metastasized into a full-blown cultural phenomenon, spreading across social media platforms with the relentless energy of a viral wildfire. By noon Pacific time, the blurred Slack screenshot of Elon Musk asleep at his desk had been repurposed into every conceivable meme format, side-by-side comparisons with historical figures known for their work ethic. Thomas Edison, Nikola Tesla, and even a drowsy-looking Albert Einstein, spliced into movie scenes where characters famously dozed off. The Godfather's Michael Corleone nodding off during a meeting, Frodo sleeping in Rivendell, and even reimagined as Renaissance paintings with dramatic chiaroscuro lighting and captions in faux Latin. The sheer absurdity of it all had turned Elon, for perhaps the first time in his public life, into something approaching relatable. The man who colonized Twitter, launched cars into space, and threatened to put chips in human brains was now, for a brief and glorious moment, just another exhausted guy who had fallen asleep at work. But while the internet reveled in the joke, the reaction inside Tesla's corporate offices was far more complicated. The PR team, led by a perpetually stressed woman named Lydia Cho, had spent the morning in damage control mode, fielding calls from journalists, investors, and even a few concerned shareholders who wanted to know if Elon's impromptu nap was a sign of deeper issues at the company. Lydia had prepared 3 separate press statements, one dismissive. Elon Musk frequently works overnight at Tesla facilities. This was a momentary break between meetings. One humorous. Even visionaries need to recharge. Stay tuned for exciting new wellness initiatives. And one defensive. This is a private matter. Tesla's focus remains on innovation. She had expected Elon to choose the first option. Instead, to her horror, he had taken matters into his own hands and tweeted a single, cryptic message. "The revolution will be well rested. #MustEZ." The tweet, naturally, exploded. Within minutes, #MustEZ was trending globally, and Tesla's social media team, usually scrambling to keep up with Elon's unpredictable online presence, seized the opportunity. They posted a teaser image of the sleek, pod-like nap station Elon had sketched earlier, along with a cheeky poll. What should we name it? 1. The Recharge Pod. 2. The Tesla Snooze. 3. The Elon Dreamliner. The response was overwhelming, with thousands of votes pouring in within the first hour. Meanwhile, in the Fremont factory, engineers who had been pulled from their usual projects to work on the pod prototype exchanged bemused glances. Just yesterday, they had been optimizing battery efficiency. Now, they were debating whether the nap pod should include white noise features or built-in meditation guides. Jake, meanwhile, was still reeling from his sudden, accidental fame. His LinkedIn inbox was flooded with messages, recruiters offering him jobs at rival tech companies. "Your boldness is exactly what we need." podcast hosts inviting him to discuss workplace humor in the age of viral media, and even a few randoms asking if he could get them a discount on a Model S. His co-workers treated him like a minor celebrity, half-jokingly asking for selfies or begging him to please take a photo of me next so I can go viral too. But beneath the surface, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that this was all temporary. Elon's mood could shift in an instant. The internet's attention span was famously short. And what happened when the next big meme came along? Then there was the other, more unsettling development, the think pieces. By mid-afternoon, op-eds began popping up across tech and business sites, dissecting what hashtag #NapElon really meant. Is Elon Musk's sleep deprivation a warning sign for Tesla? Asked Business Insider. The dark side of hustle culture. Even billionaires can't outrun burnout, declared Wired. Some articles framed the nap as an endearing moment of humanity. Others used it as a jumping-off point to critique Tesla's notorious overtime demands. A particularly scathing piece in The Atlantic asked, if the CEO is this exhausted, what does that say about the workers on the factory floor? Elon, for his part, seemed to be enjoying the chaos. He held an impromptu all-hands meeting in the factory cafeteria, where he joked about the memes, showed off early nap pod schematics, and in a move that surprised everyone announced a new company-wide policy, mandatory recharge breaks for employees working more than 12-hour shifts. The room erupted in applause, though a few skeptical whispers lingered. Was this just PR? Would this actually change anything? As the workday wound down, Jake found himself staring at his phone, scrolling through the endless stream of hashtag #NapElon content. He had started the day as a nobody. Now he was something else. A catalyst. A cautionary tale. A footnote in Tesla lore. He wasn't sure. All he knew was that tomorrow the internet would move on. But for Tesla, and for him, nothing would ever be quite the same. The laughter and viral memes had barely faded when the real storm hit Wall Street. By 8 a.m. the next morning, Tesla's stock price had dropped 4.7% in pre-market trading, a plunge that sent shockwaves through investor circles and triggered a cascade of panicked emails between Tesla's executive team and its largest shareholders. The financial analysts' reports were brutal. Musk's Napgate raises governance concerns, declared Morgan Stanley. Is Tesla CEO distracted by side projects including sleep pods? Asked Goldman Sachs. The underlying message was clear what the internet found hilarious. The markets interpreted as instability. And nothing made billionaires more nervous than unpredictability. Inside Tesla's Palo Alto headquarters, the board of directors had convened an emergency meeting. The mood in the glass-walled conference room was tense, the air thick with the scent of overpriced coffee and unspoken frustration. Seated at the head of the table, Robin Denholm, Tesla's chairwoman, scrolled through the morning's headlines with a deepening frown. Elon, we need to address this, she said, her voice calm but firm. The narrative is spiraling. First a nap photo, then the tweet. Now this. She turned her tablet around to show the latest Bloomberg piece. Tesla's Nap Pod initiative sparks investor fears over misplaced priorities. Elon, slouched in his chair with his arms crossed, looked more annoyed than concerned. It's a fucking meme, Robin. The stock will bounce back. It's not just a meme, interjected Antonio Gracias, one of Tesla's longest-serving board members. It's the perception. We're in the middle of ramping up Cybertruck production, battling delays in Berlin, and now the headlines are about napping? The optics are terrible. Across the table, Ira Ehrenpreis, another director, leaned forward. Elon, we're not saying you shouldn't take breaks. But the way this played out unplanned, uncontrolled, it makes Tesla look unserious. And with the SEC still monitoring your every tweet. Oh, come on. Elon snapped. Since when does taking a nap make me unserious? You know how many nights I've spent on the factory floor this quarter. The debate raged for nearly an hour, some directors arguing for a formal statement to reassure investors, others pushing Elon to temporarily step back from social media. A few even suggesting he publicly shelve the nap pod idea to refocus attention on Tesla's core business. Through it all, Elon remained defiant. You're missing the point, he said finally. This isn't a distraction. It's an opportunity. We're getting more free press than we would from a Super Bowl ad. And the pod, it's not just some gimmick. If we can patent this, It's a new revenue stream, corporate wellness contracts, maybe even consumer sales. You think Google and Amazon won't want these for their campuses?" Silence fell over the room. The board members exchanged glances. It was classic Elon turning a potential liability into a moonshot. But would it work? Meanwhile, downstairs in the PR bullpen, Lydia Cho was fighting her own battles. Reporters from the Wall Street Journal and CNBC were demanding comments. A particularly aggressive hedge fund manager had just gone on Squawk Box to declare that Tesla needed adult supervision. And worst of all, an anonymous post on Blind, a notoriously leaky workplace app, claimed that Tesla's factory workers were being pressured to skip breaks to meet quotas, directly contradicting Elon's recharge rhetoric. Lydia buried her face in her hands. How had one stupid photo started all this? Back in the factory, Jake Reynolds was doing his best to stay under the radar. The initial euphoria of his notoriety had faded, replaced by a gnawing paranoia. Every sideways glance from a manager felt like a threat. Every laugh in the break room sounded like it might be at his expense. When Diane Harris summoned him to her office again, his stomach dropped. But instead of firing him, she handed him a non-disclosure agreement. "Sign this," she said. "Its standard covers anything you might have seen or heard related to recent events." Jake scanned the document. It was dense with legalese, but one clause jumped out. Employee agrees not to discuss, depict, or otherwise share any internal communications or observations regarding Elon Musk's activities or habits without express written consent. He looked up. "Is this because of the photo?" Diane's expression was unreadable. "It's because the world doesn't need a sequel." As Jake signed, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just crossed an invisible line from being the guy who captured a moment to the guy who'd been silenced by it. Outside, the sun was setting over Silicon Valley. Somewhere, a Bloomberg terminal flashed with the latest update. Tesla recovers slightly after Musk hints at major product roadmap update next week. The cycle was already turning, but in quiet corners of the internet, new threads were popping up. Did Tesla just gaslight us about burnout culture? Why did that employee sign an NDA? What aren't they telling us? The nap was over. The real wake-up call was just beginning.